What time is it? It's nation time.
Welcome to the AfterWords program. I'm Baba Kafinse, your host, and I'm joined by a very good friend, comrade, and colleague, Cardinal Swad. This week's preacher for our sermon, Which Road Are You On? Welcome, Cardinal Swad. I hope all is well with you today, and thank you for a powerful sermon.
Thanks for having me, brother.
The sermon scripture for today's sermon comes from the book of Matthew, chapter 2, verses 11 and 12. And the scripture basically discusses the Magi, or the three wise men, when they visit the Black Messiah at his birth, of course, presenting gifts. As they depart, they opt to defy Herod and listen to the God incarnate within them by choosing another road of departure from the place where they were. And I'd just like to ask you, if you would, could you provide an interpretation of the Christmas story that is very different than the one we're commonly told and believe? Please discuss how the Pan-African Orthodox Christian Church's interpretation of this story differs from the story that is more commonly told and adopted.
Well, in terms of the scripture that was used, that one spoke to me because, during the Advent Christmas season, during Advent, we have the four themes. And for the fourth theme, we kind of go back and forth between focusing on charity or focusing on incarnation. And for whatever reason, incarnation was just beat me upside the head. It was just speaking to me, especially as I was kind of going over the official definition, which is the embodiment of the divine or the embodiment of some quality, value, or principle in someone's being. And so I just kept reading that and hearing it, and it sounded to me like what it was saying was God made flesh, or whatever quality you believe in, that you stand on business for, made flesh. If you absolutely represent love, when love is incarnated in you, you are the living embodiment of love. Or it may be self-determination or encouragement, whatever it is, whatever that value or that principle is. And that was just really moving to me. And going along those lines, I started thinking, so, because in our church, in our movement, we always talk about God incarnate, God incarnate, God incarnate, waking up to the God, the power, the force that's in us. And so then what does that look like? Well, I started thinking what it looks like having the courage to do what rationally doesn't make sense. And that led me to that particular scripture, because those magi, the wise men, as folk refer to them, they were disobeying the power of the time. They were literally putting their lives on the line. And so that's why I named the sermon, Which Road Are You On? Because one road would have them doing exactly what Herod told them to do. That was the safe road. That if they did what he said, the child would have been murdered, but their lives would have been spared. And they would have been, cool with the powers that be. Another road said, wait a minute. I have to represent the divine, and this child in the story represents the divine, literally represents, God infusing God's self into human affairs. And so how can I disobey that? And so which road is really like, am I going to allow fear and obedience to these power, these racist powers and principalities? Am I going to allow that to be incarnate in me? Or am I going to allow God and love and courage and self-determination and all those things that we really value? Am I going to let those things be so much a part of who I am that they literally ooze out of me in every decision I make and every action that I take. I don't know if I answered your question, but
Well, I still appreciate your the response, and it compelled me to think about. I'm glad you mentioned fear, because and I think you very creatively make an analogy or a comparison. Maybe I'm not using the right word, between the decision the Magi had and where we are today in terms of uh, the program 2025 and all of this. And when you said fear in your response a minute ago, it made me think about the kind of mood, excuse me, that seemed to permeate our people on November the 6th. So there was gloom and doom. If you went to the workplace or the classroom or wherever, everybody was like, oh, it's the end. And I think you very clearly make the point in your charge or your question to us, and the example in the Magi, they could have, as you just said, gave into the fear.
yo,
Or
man, look, right now, and it's not just with black folk, right now, or recently, ABC, the American Broadcasting Corporation,
the lawsuit.
capitulated to Donald Trump's whiny ass um, pushback on them reporting on verified facts, calling his punk a rapist, excuse me.
Mhm.
And so he's pushing back on them, and they bent the knee, they kissed the ring, they're paying him $15 million and his court fees out of fear. Morning Joe, a show on MSNBC,
Mhm.
uh, the two hosts, longtime Republicans, but they moved away from the Republican Party because they said Trump is a crazy man. And so they've been talking and pointing out that Trump is actually a crazy lunatic, idiot, etc. And they've been talking this for years now, for at least the past 4 or 5
Mhm.
years. But as soon as he won, one of the first things they do is they
Yeah.
went down to Mar-a-Lago and started kissing up and riding the jock, or whatever term you want to use, to get back in good graces out of fear. And so it's not just black people; all kinds of folk are allowing fear to order their steps. And I just thought that particular Bible story that we dealt with was powerful, and it speaks to us because black folk are rightly worried and anxious, etc., about the coming days and the coming years. But are we going to allow fear to rule us, or are we going to step into our divinity and allow that to be incarnated in us?
And I appreciate your ability to focus on our power, the power within us to be self-determining and determine the outcome of our lives and how we live our lives.
Can I
Very,
say something real quick? Because
go
you you,
ahead.
you said you appreciate that,
Yes.
but what am I trying to say here? Um, most sermons are preachers preaching to themselves. Like whatever message I'm preaching, I need to hear it because I'm one of those folk worried and anxious about where we're going, where this world is headed, how it's going to impact Black people. And
Mhm.
so this wasn't just a message for those who are out there listening. It's a message for me too. I need to hear that. I need to be encouraged and reminded that there's a power greater than me that I can allow to just take hold totally in my being so that I can move in ways that I can be proud of, my ancestors can be proud of, and my children can be proud
As I hear you say that, it is reminiscent or it resonates with me in terms of the concept of the focus of your sermon, the God incarnate within us. So that suggests to me this dialogue, this internal dialogue, which manifests as a sermon, is really the God incarnate operating within you as a conveyor of this message. We are really down to the last minute. If you could briefly explain for our viewers and listeners how the best self movements of the Pan African Orthodox Christian Church can prepare us Black folks to allow God and self determination to not only be incarnate within us, but to manifest into the action that we need to make our lives better?
Well, I think it's symbolized by this season, the whole Advent Christmas season. We say that Christmas is not just about celebrating the birth of the Messiah, Jesus. It's about celebrating the birth of the Messiah in each of us. And I think that is what we offer the world, a theology that recognizes our divinity, that recognizes the words, Jesus shared with his disciples, what I can do, you can do, and even greater things shall you do. Jesus was not looking at himself as the end all be all. He was expecting other people to step up into their divinity and into their greatness. And that's what this church, this movement is all about, waking us up to our worth, to our inner divinity, our Messiah potential, so that we can then do those things that God is calling us to do, build the world that we need, et cetera, et cetera. I think that's the most powerful thing that we offer, because it then moves us to build those tangible things that can give us the material power that we need to manifest in the world.
Thank you very much for that. And I'd like to thank you for a powerful sermon and for this insightful conversation. I'd like to also thank our viewers for tuning in and urge you to continue to join us. We invite you to come back next week and every week after that for powerful sermons such as this one, and the AfterWords discussion that follows that helps to put a little more meat on the bones in case you missed something. Of course, we hope that you have a happy holiday season, a happy, healthy, and prosperous new year. And we close with the words of our patron saint, Marcus Mosiah Garvey, by saying, "Up, you mighty race, and accomplish what you will."
What time is it? It's nation time.